brisk wind coursed through Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, stirring the golden-brown leaves that had started to accumulate around the newly excavated grave. The sky hung heavy in a dull gray, mirroring the sorrow that enveloped the mourners. In their midst was David Reynolds, a figure renowned for his vast fortune, expansive business empire, and the influence that accompanied such stature. Yet today, all of that felt insignificant. Today, he was merely a man grappling with the profound absence of his wife. Evelyn had been his steadfast support. She was the sole witness to the figure cloaked in wealth, the one who navigated the cold calculations, hidden beneath the polished exterior. They had crafted a shared existence, rich with affection, joy, and a tinge of remorse. The shadow of unfulfilled parenthood lingered in their thoughts, yet they had found a way to coexist with that absence. As he stood by her grave, observing the coffin descend into the earth, a profound emptiness enveloped his heart. It felt like a piece of him had been interred alongside her. The funeral unfolded with the grandeur that was anticipated. The city's upper crust had assembled, some moved by authentic grief, while others attended merely for the sake of being seen at the season's most talked-about affair. Colleagues, business partners, and friends stepped forward to express their sympathies, each handshake and hug feeling somewhat robotic. David hardly took any of it in. His world had turned quiet, overwhelmed by the lingering echoes of Evelyn's laughter, the warmth of her voice forever out of reach. He longed for the crowd to vanish, to grant him solitude in his sorrow, yet he understood that such a wish was unattainable. A man of his caliber was never genuinely solitary, save for the aspects that truly counted. As the service concluded and individuals began to disperse, David stood motionless, gazing at the gleaming wood of the coffin now blanketed in earth. His fingers quivered ever so slightly as he wrapped his coat more snugly around himself, the chill gnawing at the fabric. The driver, an elderly gentleman named Joe, stood at a respectful distance, fully aware that his employer required this time alone. David inhaled deeply and began to walk away, but then something peculiar caught his eye. A young woman lingered at the cemetery's edge, partially concealed by the towering oak tree. Her complexion was ashen, and her demeanor was inscrutable. Her attire set her apart from the rest. As the guests donned their lavish black coats and high-end scarves, she opted for a modest jacket, a bit frayed at the edges, paired with jeans that had clearly experienced more vibrant times. Her long brown hair cascaded gently over her shoulders, and there was an unmistakable familiarity in her stance, with her hands balled into fists, suggesting a struggle within. David furrowed his brow, attempting to recall her identity. He failed to identify her from any professional networks, nor did she appear to fit into his realm. Yet there was an undeniable quality about her, something that quickened his heartbeat in a way he couldn't quite grasp. She advanced with uncertainty, pausing as though weighing her choice anew. Their gazes intertwined for an instant, and David experienced an inexplicable attraction to her. Yet, just as he was about to speak, she pivoted sharply and strode off. "Excuse me, sir?" Joe's voice interrupted his musings. "The vehicle is prepared." David watched the young woman fade into the distance, then sighed and shook his head. It was likely inconsequential. Perhaps she was a far-off kin of Evelyn's, a visitor there to honor her memory yet hesitant to step forward. He brushed off the peculiar meeting and made his way to the car, his thoughts plunging once more into the depths of sorrow. That evening, as he lingered in his penthouse with a view of the New York skyline, the vision of the girl lingered in his mind. He had never been one to linger on unfamiliar faces, yet he couldn't dismiss the sense that her presence at the cemetery held a deeper meaning. He filled a glass with whiskey, the amber liquid dancing in the soft glow of his study's light. His gaze drifted to a framed photograph of Evelyn resting on his desk. "I miss you," he murmured, his voice trembling just a bit. Evelyn had always possessed a unique ability to find significance in the world around her, holding steadfast to the belief that every occurrence unfolded for a purpose. If she were present, she would have advised him to heed his instincts regarding the girl. He exhaled softly and savored a sip of his drink, reassuring himself that it was merely sorrow weaving illusions in his thoughts. Yet, beneath the surface, he was aware that this encounter was far from their final goodbye. Yet, inexplicably, the image of the young woman lingered in his thoughts, refusing to fade away. That night, slumber eluded me. He lay awake in his penthouse in Manhattan, gazing at the ceiling, attuned to the distant hum of the city. Whenever he shut his eyes, she reappeared, positioned by the oak tree, her face ashen, hands tightly balled, her expression a tumult of fear and desperation. There was an inexplicable quality about her that stirred a sense of unease within him. By morning, he assured himself that he was merely overanalyzing. It was sorrow weaving illusions in his thoughts. The funeral had drained him emotionally, and perhaps he had merely conjured the depth of the experience. He urged himself to let it go. Yet letting go proved to be a challenge. The following afternoon, David sat in his office on the 54th floor of the Reynolds Corporation building, gazing vacantly at a pile of reports. Mark, his assistant, had lined up a series of meetings one after another, yet he hardly focused on any of them. His thoughts wandered, captivated by the enigma of the girl. Throughout his life, he had meticulously navigated choices, tackled challenges, and anticipated market shifts with remarkable accuracy. Yet an undeniable sense lingered that this moment held significant weight. Feeling exasperated, he grabbed his phone and began to scroll through his contacts, searching for the name that had caught his attention. "Joe, I have a favor to ask of you," David stated as soon as his driver picked up the call. "Do you recall the young woman we saw at the cemetery yesterday? Who was it that lingered near the oak tree?" A moment of silence lingered before Joe replied, "Yeah, I saw her." It seemed as though she had something to express, yet she hesitated and decided against it. "Precisely," David murmured. "I must uncover her identity." "Do you believe she was acquainted with Mrs. Reynolds?" Joe inquired. "I don't know," David confessed, running a hand through his hair. "Yet, I can't shake the sense that she was more than just an unfamiliar face. Consult with the personnel at the cemetery. Perhaps they witnessed something. Discover all that you can." Joe consented, leaving David with a swirl of excitement and apprehension as he hung up the phone. He couldn't quite grasp the reason behind his unwavering resolve to seek out this girl. Perhaps it was due to Evelyn's unwavering belief in destiny, and a part of him pondered whether this was a sign of some sort. As the evening wore on, David found himself in his penthouse, a drink in hand, when Joe's call came through. "I have located her, sir." David positioned himself upright. "Who is this person?" Joe mentioned that her name is Lena Brooks. At 24 years old, she resides in Queens, and here's where it takes a captivating turn. Her mother was a woman named Sarah Brooks. David's hold on the glass grew firmer at the sound of that name. Sarah Brooks, a name that had faded from memory for more than 20 years, yet remained etched in his mind. His heart raced within his chest as long-buried memories clawed their way back to the surface. Sarah was his first love, a memory from his youth when he was a young man striving to carve out his identity. In Chicago, their paths crossed as he immersed himself in the world of finance, driven by a relentless pursuit of success in his role as an investment analyst. Sarah was unlike anyone he had ever encountered, a vibrant free spirit with a laugh that could illuminate any space. They had plunged into love with fervor, yet it proved fleeting. When David received a transformative opportunity in New York, he opted for his profession instead of romance. Sarah pleaded with him to remain, assuring him that they could create a life together anywhere, yet he was too engulfed in his aspirations. The most recent moment he had shared with her was filled with tears, as she expressed that he would come to regret his decision to leave her behind. He had overlooked her. After more than 25 years, her name reemerged unexpectedly in his life. Her daughter was just the same. David took a deep breath. "Have you discovered anything further?" Joe paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Absolutely, sir. Sarah left us last year. Cancer." Peculiar constriction settled in David's chest. Sarah had vanished, exactly as Evelyn did. And now her child, his child? Absolutely not. That couldn't be done. If Lena was 24, it indicated that Sarah had been expecting when he departed. Yet she kept it to herself. The heaviness of the understanding almost stole his breath away. Had he inadvertently forsaken his own offspring? Joe's voice interrupted his musings. "What would you like to do, sir?" David hesitated before responding. Thoughts surged through his mind as he struggled to connect the dots. If Lena was truly his daughter, it implied she had spent her formative years without his presence. Did she endure pain? Did Sarah find it challenging to raise her on her own? A heavy weight settled in his stomach at the thought of Sarah battling cancer alone. He had enjoyed a life of opulence while his own child, if she truly was his, may have faced hardships. "I must speak with her," David finally declared, his tone resolute. "Discover her workplace and the nature of her job. I must see her." Joe consented and ended the call, leaving David to ponder in solitude. He rose from his seat and approached the window, gazing out at the city where he had forged his empire. After years of achievement, the triumph and riches suddenly seemed devoid of significance. He devoted his whole existence to pursuing a goal, only to come to the profound realization that he had forsaken something far more significant. Yet the lingering question was Lena aware? Did Sarah mention him to her? Or had she been raised under the impression that her father was absent entirely? After hours had passed and the city fell into a hushed stillness, with only the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock echoing through the penthouse, David retrieved an old box from the depths of his closet. Within lay letters, photographs, and memories he had carefully tucked away. He stumbled upon an old photograph of himself and Sarah, her radiant smile illuminating the moment, his arms enveloping her in warmth. His throat constricted as the weight of time's passage dawned on him. He was uncertain about Lena's desires, or whether she had any intentions toward him whatsoever. Yet one thing remained undeniable. His life had transformed irrevocably. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David found himself in his office the following morning, yet for the first time ever, the affairs of business held no significance for him. The documents scattered across his desk, the influx of emails, the unanswered phone calls, all seemed remote, trivial. His thoughts drifted, ensnared in the echoes of a history he had tried to forget. Sarah Brooks. Her name resonated in his mind like a melody he had cherished but let slip away. Now presenting Lena Brooks. A name that had previously eluded him now consumed his thoughts, refusing to fade away. The burden of understanding pressed down on him. If she truly was his daughter, it signified that he had overlooked her whole existence. 24 years filled with celebrations, initial strides, theatrical performances, and challenges. All things. And it was all due to Sarah's silence. Or perhaps she had not. Had she made an effort to connect with him, only for him to be too consumed by his aspirations to see? The idea pierced him with a sudden wave of remorse. Joe had demonstrated his usual efficiency. By noon, David found himself with a comprehensive report laid out before him. Lena's residence, her workplace, and some insights into her life. She worked as a waitress at a quaint diner in Queens, struggling to make ends meet. Her home was a simple apartment, a stark contrast to the luxurious penthouses and grand mansions that David had dedicated his life to amassing. She was all alone, with no close relatives remaining. Only child. Absent guardians. Only her. The revelation hit him with an intensity he hadn't anticipated. Having been raised without a father, she now faced the heart-wrenching loss of her mother as well. Did she linger by Sarah's grave as he had by Evelyn's, experiencing that same overwhelming sense of solitude? He had devoted his whole existence to making unyielding choices without a moment's hesitation. Yet this situation felt distinct. This held deep significance. For the first time, he found himself uncertain about the correct course of action. Did he step into that diner and reveal the truth to her? Was she truly interested in finding out? The way she gazed at him during the funeral suggested an internal struggle about whether to make her move. Had she already begun to suspect? Or had she merely come to honor Evelyn's memory? Countless inquiries, yet no solutions in sight. As the afternoon waned, David found himself in Queens, nestled in the back of his sleek black town car, observing from afar as Lena busied herself within the diner. He had promised himself he wouldn't enter. He simply yearned to catch a glimpse of her. Yet, in this moment he found himself captivated by her presence. She wiped down the table with swift, practiced motions, a weary yet courteous smile gracing her lips as she engaged with a customer. Her lengthy brown locks were gathered in a relaxed ponytail, with a few wisps cascading over her face. In that fleeting instant, a laugh escaped her lips. Though it was hardly perceptible from his seat, there was an unsettling quality to it that sent a chill racing down his spine. It was known, not in the manner of Evelyn's voice, but in a different, more profound sense. It was the sound of Sarah's laughter. His chest constricted. This had transcended mere speculation. He was aware. He sensed it. He swung the car door open and stepped out without a moment's hesitation. From the driver's seat, Joe cast a curious glance at him, yet David chose to disregard it. He navigated the street, his heart racing with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. The bell above the diner's door chimed softly as he entered. The aroma of coffee and fried delights permeated the atmosphere, intertwining with the murmur of chatter and the rhythmic clinking of utensils. A handful of gazes shifted in his direction. He certainly stood out. His costly suit and gleaming shoes gave him the appearance of someone entirely mismatched in a humble diner such as this. Yet he remained indifferent. His gaze was fixed on Lena. She was still oblivious to his presence. She poured coffee for the elderly man at the counter, listening intently to his words and nodding in agreement. David inhaled deeply and approached her with purpose. Suddenly, as if attuned to an unseen presence, she pivoted. As their gazes locked, the world around them faded away, suspended in a breathless pause. Lena held the coffee pot tightly, her hand quivering ever so slightly. Her eyes unmistakably reflected recognition. She was fully aware of his identity. "Mr. Reynolds," she stated, her tone calm yet cautious. David felt a parched sensation in his throat. She was aware of his name. This indicated that she had researched him. "I was hoping we could talk," he said, his voice softer than usual. She placed the coffee pot on the counter, her hands brushing against her apron as she wiped them clean. "Concerning what topic?" He cast a quick look around. The diner had a moderate crowd, making it clear that this wasn't the ideal setting for such a discussion. Secluded spot. She observed him intently for a moment before releasing a sigh. "I finish my shift in an hour. If you remain here by that time, we can have a conversation." David gave a slight nod before pivoting and making his way to an unoccupied booth by the window. The gaze of the other patrons weighed heavily upon him, intrigued by the figure in the tailored suit who had just entered, inquiring about their waitress. Yet, none of it held significance. What truly counted was that she had not turned him down. A single hour stretched on endlessly. He lingered over the menu, feigning interest, while nursing a cup of coffee that he hardly savored. He observed her glide through the diner, maintaining an air of normalcy, yet he sensed an underlying tension in her demeanor. At last, as her shift came to a close, she removed her apron and approached him, her face a mask of mystery. She mentioned that there's a park just a few blocks away from here. Let's take a stroll and have a conversation. David rose to his feet and trailed behind her, his heart pounding with anticipation. The crisp evening air enveloped them as they strolled quietly for a few moments. At last, she paused by a bench and turned to look at him. "I know who you are," she said, crossing her arms. "I have been aware for some time." David took a deep breath. "Did your mother ever share with you?" Lena gave a slight shake of her head. "Not in a straightforward manner. However, I discovered the truth. As she fell ill, I began to sift through old documents and medical records, and there it was, your name on my birth certificate." His chest constricted. She kept it to herself. "I assumed," she remarked with a touch of bitterness. "Since you never showed up, you never sought us out. You have just departed." David experienced a gut-wrenching sensation. If I had only been aware. However, you did not, she interrupted. And that's the crux of the matter. My mother brought me up by herself. She juggled 2 jobs to ensure there was always food on the table for me. And where have you been? In your towering office, raking in your fortune? The fury in her voice was warranted, and David found himself without a defense. He was at a loss for words to mend the situation. He finally spoke, expressing his desire to understand you. If you would permit me. Lena fixed her gaze on him, the silence stretching between them before she finally found her voice. I'm uncertain about the desire to get to know you. After a brief moment of silence, she continued, but I will consider it. It was rather minimal, yet it held significance. Before moving on, please subscribe to our channel, like, and share. David dedicated his life to closing deals, negotiating contracts, and making strategic decisions that guaranteed his success. Yet, as he sat in his penthouse that night, gazing at the shimmering city lights of New York, he experienced the profound sense of a man who had relinquished control over all aspects of his life. Lena's words resonated in his thoughts. I'm uncertain about the desire to get to know you. She was completely justified in feeling that way. He had been absent throughout her life, not out of a desire to forsake her, but because he had never been aware of her existence. Yet, did that alter the truth of her experiences? She had been raised in the absence of a father, witnessing her mother's hardships, while he resided in comfort, unaware of the world he had abandoned. Regardless of his attempts to rationalize the situation, the guilt lingered, an oppressive burden on his conscience. After many years, he suddenly began to doubt the core principles that had shaped his existence. He dedicated years to the pursuit of success, convinced that riches and influence were the pinnacle of achievement. And yet, as he stood at Sarah's grave and beheld Lena for the first time, he came to understand the profound emptiness of it all. What significance did all his wealth hold if he had faltered in the most crucial role of his existence, that of a father? For years, he believed that Evelyn was the sole woman he had ever genuinely loved. Yet now, memories of Sarah began to resurface, uninvited and persistent. She was unlike anyone he had encountered before. She possessed kindness, intelligence, and an unwavering sense of independence. They had devoted countless evenings to deep conversations about aspirations, existence, and what lies ahead. Discussions he had not engaged in with anyone since. And now she had departed, leaving a daughter who sought to distance herself from him. The following morning, David reached a conclusion. He had no intention of intruding into Lena's world, yet he also refused to fade into the background. He yearned to support her, regardless of whether she ever acknowledged him as her father. He lifted the receiver and dialed Joe's number. I would like you to establish a trust fund for Lena Brooks, he stated. She doesn't need to be aware that it's for me, but I desire for her to have financial stability. Joe paused on the other end. Do you really think she won't discover it? David released a slow breath. Ensure it remains untraceable. Ensure that she is well looked after. Several days went by without a word from Lena. David felt the urge to connect, yet he honored her need for distance. One evening, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number appeared. His heart raced as he responded. Greetings. A moment of silence followed. Then a voice I recognized broke through. My name is Lena. David adjusted his posture. Lena, I'm pleased you reached out. She exhaled softly. I have been pondering. I'm uncertain about my feelings regarding this situation, yet I find myself with questions. David acknowledged her, though she remained unaware of his silent agreement. Feel free to inquire about anything you'd like. She paused, contemplating her words before finally breaking the silence. Did you have affection for my mother? The inquiry took him by surprise. After years of suppressing those feelings, he found himself unable to ignore the reality when confronted by Lena. Indeed, he finally spoke. I certainly did. Lena paused, lost in thought. So what kept you from being there? David swept his fingers through his hair. I was unfamiliar with Lena. If I had... He paused, aware that expressing I would have been there held no significance for her at this moment. I suppose I just can't grasp why my mom never mentioned it to you. she remarked. David confessed that he felt the same way. Perhaps she believed I wouldn't be affected. Perhaps she believed I was too engrossed in my profession. Or perhaps he paused in uncertainty. Perhaps she felt a sense of fear. What is there to fear? That I would take you away from her? David murmured gently. She was aware of my resources and the connections I possessed. Perhaps she feared that if I discovered the truth, I would attempt to pursue custody. Lena let out a deep breath. Perhaps. David made the bold choice to embrace uncertainty. Are you interested in getting together? Shall we have a conversation face to face? A lengthy silence ensued. At last she replied, yes, I believe I would. They convened at a serene cafe in Brooklyn the following afternoon. As David made his entrance, Lena was already present, perched by the window, gently stirring her cup of coffee. She glanced upward as he neared, her face a mask of mystery. He settled into his seat opposite her, an unexpected wave of anxiety washing over him, far more intense than any he had experienced in a boardroom meeting. You actually decided to come, she remarked, arching an eyebrow. I said I would, he responded. She observed him intently for a brief moment. So, share a bit about yourself. Not the wealthy persona, but the authentic you. David found himself questioning whether he truly recognized that person at all anymore. He started by saying, I was raised in Chicago, a family of the middle class. My father worked in a factory, while my mother dedicated her life to teaching. I navigated my way through college, establishing my business from the very foundation. He paused briefly before continuing, I met your mother during a business trip to Seattle. She was employed at a bookstore. I entered in search of a book and left utterly enchanted by her presence. A subtle smile played at the edge of Lena's lips. That seems to fit her perfectly. David gave a slight nod. She possessed a unique ability to transform every moment into an exhilarating journey. That's probably the reason I was drawn to her so fast. Lena swirled her coffee with a distracted air. Strange, she remarked. Listening to stories about my mom from someone who experienced her in a way that was entirely different from my own. David forced down the knot that had formed in his throat. I am curious about her journey following our time together. How was she in her role as a mother? Lena's gaze grew tender. She was extraordinary, powerful. She devoted herself entirely to me. She juggled 2 jobs, ensuring I had everything I required, even at the cost of her own needs. David's remorse intensified. She ought not to have faced it by herself. No, she shouldn't have, Lena said, her voice cutting through the air. However, she did. David studied her intently. How about you, Lena? What are your aspirations in life? She emitted a soft chuckle. That question carries a lot of weight. She gazed through the window. I aspire to pursue something beyond merely serving at tables. I had aspirations of attending college, but things didn't unfold as I had hoped. David paused, contemplating his words before finally breaking the silence. What if you were able to still do it? Her expression darkened. Could you clarify what you mean? Imagine a world where financial constraints didn't exist. Lena tensed up. Are you attempting to purchase my pardon? No, David stated with conviction. My only desire is to assist. If pursuing college is still your desire, I can help facilitate that for you, though there's no obligation to accept my offer. She gazed at him, her eyes lingering for an extended moment. I'm uncertain. There's no rush to make a decision, he said softly. Consider it for a moment. She nodded with a measured deliberation. I shall. For the first time, David experienced a glimmer of hope. He faced a considerable journey ahead to gain her trust, but at least now a glimmer of hope existed. As he sat across from Lena in the serene Brooklyn cafe, it dawned on him that this was not just any negotiation. A realm where figures and tactics bore no significance. This was not about triumph or defeat. It concerned something much more delicate. Restoring a bond with a daughter who had ample justification to maintain her distance. As the afternoon wore on, their dialogue deepened, delving into memories, into regrets, and into the harsh realities that neither could evade. Lena chose her words with caution, her demeanor protective, as if she were weighing the decision to either invite David closer or maintain the barrier that separated them. She savored her coffee in deliberate, contemplative sips, her gaze probing his expression for meaning. Maybe it's honesty or maybe it's remorse. For the first time in years, David found himself utterly speechless. "I'm not sure what you're looking for from me," Lena finally said, placing her cup on the table. "I'm not quite sure what I'm hoping for from this." David inclined his body just a touch, his forearms finding a comfortable perch on the table. "I hold no expectations. I simply wish to understand you better." She released a soft chuckle, gently shaking her head. "That's the crux of the matter. You're not familiar with who I am. You haven't done that at all." Her eyes darted to the window. "For 24 years, your existence was a complete mystery to me." Her words landed with the force of a gut punch. It wasn't merely that he had failed to be part of her upbringing. It was that she had come to think she had no father whatsoever. Bedtime stories were absent, birthdays passed without shared joy, and father-daughter traditions never took root. Only quietude. David breathed out slowly, selecting his words with precision. "The past is unchangeable, Lena, yet I can be present in this moment." She observed him intently for a prolonged moment, as if weighing the possibility of placing her trust in him. "What significance does being here hold for you? Are you just tossing cash my way? Establishing an elaborate trust fund to ease your guilt?" He shook his head in disbelief. "This isn't the focus here." He hesitated for a moment, then continued, "But if there's any way I can assist you, I will." Lena let out a weary sigh, her fingers gently massaging her temples. "I have no interest in your money, David." David experienced a surge of irritation, directed not towards her but rather at the circumstances surrounding them. He had dedicated his life to resolving issues through financial means and taking action, yet this was a challenge that couldn't be addressed with a simple exchange. He acknowledged this with a measured tone. But what if it transcends mere financial gain? What if it revolves around presenting you with choices? A future you truly desire? She regarded him with a hint of doubt. "What if I'm unsure of what I truly desire?" "Then we'll sort it out," he stated plainly. Lena let out a quick breath, her fingers drumming rhythmically on the table's surface. "Honestly, I'm not claiming that I'm prepared to jump into a significant father-daughter relationship with you all of a sudden. It's premature for that." "I see," David replied, attempting to mask his disappointment. Yet, she paused, selecting her phrases with precision. "Perhaps we could proceed at a more leisurely pace. Let's explore the possibilities ahead." It wasn't an enthusiastic affirmation. The reunion fell short of the expectations he had quietly nurtured within himself. Yet it held significance. A new chapter unfolds. A week went by since their encounter, and David held back the impulse to inundate her with calls or texts. He hoped she would connect when she felt ready. As the night deepened, his phone suddenly illuminated with a new message. "Lena, are you available tomorrow? I have something to share with you." David's fingers lingered above the keyboard as he prepared to reply. "David, naturally. At what time and in which location?" The following afternoon, David discovered himself in an unfamiliar neighborhood. Bushwick, Brooklyn. It was a stark contrast to the sleek glass towers and opulent condos he was accustomed to. The avenues were adorned with aged brick structures, vibrant murals embellishing the facades, a fusion of heritage and resilience that narrated a tale of its own. As he caught sight of Lena standing outside a quaint little shop, that all too familiar flutter of anxiety washed over him once more. "You arrived," she remarked while securing her hands in her coat pockets. "Certainly," he replied. "What is this location?" She gestured toward the glass door. "Step inside." David stepped inside, instantly greeted by the aroma of fresh paint mingling with a subtle metallic tang. The room was compact yet brimming with vitality. Canvases adorned the walls, some still in the midst of creation, while others radiated with vibrant hues and deep feelings. In the rear, several creators immersed themselves in their craft, absorbed in their individual realms. "This is where I dedicate the majority of my hours," Lena remarked. "This is a gathering place for artists in the area. We create in this space, showcase our creations, and support one another's development. David surveyed his surroundings with a sense of genuine admiration. This is truly remarkable. Lena offered a faint smile. I have been visiting this place since I was 16 years old. It's the sole place where I've truly felt at home. David glanced in her direction. Do you create art? She gave a slight shrug. I'm not sure I would label myself that way. I simply bring forth. She guided him to the rear, where a canvas awaited on an easel. David's breath hitched at the sight. It was a portrait of Sarah. The particulars were strikingly precise, from the manner in which her hair framed her face to the glow in her eyes. Lena seemed to have ensnared a fragment of her mother's essence within the strokes of her brush. After she passed away, I created this, Lena said softly. It was my method of keeping her close. David forced down the tightness in his throat. It's truly stunning. Lena paused, contemplating her next words. I can't quite explain why I brought you here, she confessed. Perhaps I simply wished for you to glimpse a side of me that transcends mere anger. David glanced at her, his gaze gentle. I'm thankful you took the time to do that. For the first time since their paths crossed, Lena no longer regarded him as an unfamiliar face. Her eyes held a trace of uncertainty, yet beneath that lay another layer, delicate yet undeniably present. I'm uncertain about what lies ahead, she confessed. David replied, I don't either. However, I would love for us to explore this together. Lena inclined her head thoughtfully, as though weighing the idea carefully. For the first time, the distance between them seemed less daunting to overcome. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, like our content, and share it with your friends. David had devoted his whole existence to mastering every detail of his surroundings. The enterprise he runs, the monetary matters he navigates, and the individuals in his circle. As he sat in the cozy Brooklyn art studio, observing his daughter immersed in her painting, he came to understand that this was a process beyond his control, one that couldn't be hurried. Lena flowed gracefully, her brush dancing over the canvas, immersed in a realm he could not enter. The quiet that enveloped them had transformed, no longer awkward or tense, but rather a sense of ease had settled in. A week prior, he had been an unfamiliar figure to her. Now, he had become a notable presence in her life. A delicate existence, perhaps, yet one that remained unyielding to dismissal. As he sat there observing her blend hues on her palette, he pondered what Sarah might express if she could witness them at this moment. Would she feel joy that he had at last located their daughter? Or would she be enraged by his prolonged absence? He longed for her forgiveness, hoping she would grasp that he had been unaware. Yet, beneath the surface, uncertainty lingered within him. Lena finally shattered the stillness, placing her brush aside and extending her arms in a graceful stretch. What is it that you actually do? She inquired, arching an eyebrow. I understand that you have wealth, but what does that truly signify? David found himself amused by her straightforwardness. I operate a firm focused on real estate investments. We acquire properties, enhance them, and sell them for a profit. Lena gave a slow nod. Oh, so you're the type who transforms historic neighborhoods into high-priced condominiums? David let out a weary breath. Not every time. Times indeed. However, it encompasses much more. We dedicate ourselves to revitalizing historic structures, infusing fresh enterprise into areas in need of support. It's more than just financial gain. Lena observed him intently, as if weighing the truth of his words. So you acquire items, enhance them, and then resell for profit? In a manner, indeed, David replied. She wore a sly grin. Best of luck attempting to turn me around. David chuckled, a bemused smile crossing his face. That's not my intention, Lena. Her expression eased a bit as she reclined against the table. I'm not quite sure what this is meant to be. Are you attempting to compensate for time that has slipped away? Or do you simply experience a sense of guilt? David let out a breath. Either option works. He locked eyes with her. Yet, above all, I simply desire an opportunity to understand you better. Lena nodded, her silence stretching into a contemplative pause. Then, with a hint of hesitation, she mentioned, "I have a show next month. Some of my creations will be showcased." It's quite significant. David adjusted his posture with a subtle movement. "That's truly remarkable. Where can it be found?" "Lower East Side. A quaint gallery. Nothing extravagant." She paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "If you'd like, you're welcome to join us." David sensed a change deep within him. A modest invitation, yet an invitation all the same. "I would be delighted to." The following weeks flew by in a haze. David immersed himself in his tasks, yet his mind frequently wandered to Lena. He immersed himself in the study of art, seeking to grasp the essence of the world she inhabited. He even explored a few galleries, an experience entirely new to him, in an effort to perceive the world through her eyes. He wished to be there for her, yet he was cautious not to intrude. She had expressed her need for time, and he was resolute in honoring that request. The night of the show arrived, and David felt a wave of anxiety wash over him, more intense than any he had experienced during a business deal. He found himself uncertain about what lay ahead. It remained uncertain whether Lena would recognize him, or if she would come to regret her decision to invite him altogether. Upon his arrival at the quaint gallery, he found it bustling with people. The walls were adorned with paintings, each one telling a distinct tale, offering a fresh viewpoint. In the heart of the room, he beheld her creation. The initial artwork was a whirlwind of abstraction, tumultuous yet oddly captivating. The second was more organized, a depiction of a woman, her visage partially hidden, as though she exists in the liminal space between two selves. And then it appeared, the portrait of Sarah. This version stood apart from the one Lena had previously presented to him. It was more rare and vulnerable. Sarah's expression in the painting conveyed a gentle softness, as if she were gazing at something, or someone, with a profound sense of understanding. David sensed a constriction in his throat. For years, he had endeavored to suppress the anguish of losing Sarah, persuading himself that sorrow was a burden he could overcome, something he could simply set aside. Yet, as he stood there gazing at that painting, he came to understand just how much of her essence remained vibrant in Lena. He glanced over to see Lena positioned close by, observing him intently. "You painted this recently?" he remarked, his voice softer than he had meant it to be. She gave a slight nod. "Indeed." David gulped. "It's truly remarkable." Lena shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her demeanor suggesting a hint of unease. She confessed that she was uncertain about including it in the show. "But then I considered perhaps she would wish to be present." David nodded, a weight of emotion pressing down on him. Indeed, she would. They lingered in quietude for a brief moment before Lena broke the stillness once more. "I feared you might not show up." David gazed at her, astonished. "What is the reason?" She merely shrugged her shoulders. "I'm uncertain. Individuals express their thoughts constantly. It doesn't imply that they will actually carry it out." David locked eyes with her. "I shall, without fail." Lena hesitated before replying, yet there was a subtle shift in her expression that revealed a hint of warmth. "Thank you for being here," she finally remarked. David beamed with delight. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything." As the night unfolded, David observed Lena engaging with the other artists, noting how she seemed to thrive in this environment. She was meant to be a part of this vibrant realm, filled with hues and creativity. For the first time, he sensed that he was beginning to find his place in her world. Before moving on to the next segment, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David was unaware of how long he had been holding his breath until the conclusion of Lena's art show. Seated in his car, parked just outside the gallery on the Lower East Side, he found himself revisiting the moments of the evening, each one vivid in his memory. Her pause before extending the invitation, the anxious tension in her stance upon his arrival, and the subtle warmth that colored her voice as she expressed gratitude for his presence all painted a vivid picture of her emotions. It may not have been substantial, but it held its own significance. For the first time since learning about his daughter, he sensed that he had truly moved closer to being a part of her life. He found himself uncertain about what would unfold next. What comes next? Was this truly the pinnacle of his aspirations? Some shared experiences and sporadic dialogue? He desired more, yet he understood the wisdom in restraint. He had already lost too much time. The next morning, he found himself immersed in his phone, seeking out any tidbits related to the art world. He delved into the world of contemporary artists, gallery exhibits, and art movements, seeking to grasp the environment that Lena occupied. He had devoted his life to making choices grounded in logical calculations and assessing risks, yet this situation felt entirely unique. This wasn't a transaction where he could foresee the results. He was exploring unknown realms, and for the first time in years he felt at peace with that. A couple of days passed before Lena made the call. For the first time, she took the initiative to contact him rather than waiting for him to make the move. "Hey," she said. Her tone relaxed yet tinged with an elusive undertone that he couldn't fully identify. "Are you free for lunch?" David straightened his posture at his desk, momentarily taken aback. "Certainly," he replied, maybe a bit too hastily. "Where is it?" "A quaint diner nestled in Queens awaits discovery. It's quite simple. I will be present." Upon his arrival at the diner, Lena was already seated in a booth by the window. She appeared transformed, exuding a sense of ease yet maintaining an air of caution. David settled into the chair opposite her, his gaze fixed intently on her features. He came to understand that despite all the discussions they had exchanged over the past few weeks, he still didn't truly know her. Lena savored a sip of her iced coffee before she began to speak. "Let me lay it out for you. I'm uncertain about the expected outcome of this. Us together." David nodded slowly, allowing her the room to elaborate. She remarked that she had lived her entire life without him. "And now, all at once, you find yourself here. I find myself uncertain whether that's a positive or negative thing." David took a deep breath, weighing his words with precision. "The past is something I cannot alter, Lena. If it were possible, I certainly would. However, I find myself unable to do so. My only focus is the present moment. If you would permit me." She drummed her fingers on the glass, lost in thought. "I prefer to take my time with things. I prefer to avoid obligatory family gatherings or awkward emotional exchanges. I'm at a loss, honestly. I wish to proceed gradually, focusing on each step as it comes." David gave a slight nod. "That seems reasonable." Lena let out a breath, a sense of relief washing over her that he wasn't pressing her for anything further. "And I have no interest in money. Simply sharing that thought." David offered a faint smile. "Understood." She gazed at him, truly examining him, as if searching for signs of trustworthiness. She confessed that she had numerous questions. "Feel free to inquire about anything you wish." Lena paused, weighing her words carefully before she began to speak. "Did you have affection for my mom?" David sensed the gravity of the question loom above him. For a long time, he had refrained from considering Sarah in that manner. "Indeed," he remarked, his tone now subdued. "I certainly did." Lena nodded, her expression suggesting she had anticipated that response, yet still found solace in hearing it confirmed. "So what kept you from being there?" David inhaled deeply. He was obligated to reveal the truth to her. "My mother and I shared a relationship that was quite intricate. In our time together, we were filled with youth. I believed I had every detail of my future mapped out, and she simply didn't align with that vision. Not in the manner she truly warranted. At the time of her departure, I had no idea she was expecting. Had I possessed that, the outcome would have been altered." Lena's silence lingered, leaving David uncertain whether it signified something positive or negative. Ultimately, she mentioned that you weren't a frequent topic of conversation for her. "Only fragments. I always thought you were just someone who didn't give a damn." "I cared," David stated with conviction. "I simply had no idea." Lena toyed with the straw in her drink. "I feel a strong desire to learn more. Concerning you, concerning her, concerning all matters." David sensed a soothing release in his chest. "In that case, I'm ready to share all the details you seek." The remainder of the lunch was punctuated by inquiries, ranging from the lighthearted to the more profound. She inquired about his profession, his early years, his existence prior to their acquaintance. In exchange, he inquired about her creative pursuits, her upbringing, and her cherished moments with Sarah. It may not have been flawless, but it held value. A beginning. Upon exiting the diner, Lena paused, contemplating her next words. "I'm not quite sure where this is headed, but I suppose I don't mind your company." David beamed with delight. It was the nearest semblance of acceptance she had offered him thus far. It was wonderful to hear that. As she turned to leave, a realization dawned on him. This went beyond his efforts to embrace fatherhood. It was a journey of grasping the existence that had unfolded in his absence and discovering how to weave himself into it, not out of necessity, but out of desire. For the first time, he dared to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, Lena felt the same way. Before moving on to the next part, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David had always been a man of unwavering confidence. Each choice he made throughout his career was intentional, measured, and exacting. As he made his way home from the diner that evening, a cloud of uncertainty enveloped his thoughts. Lena had offered him an opportunity, albeit a modest one, yet significant all the same. He revisited the dialogue in his thoughts, cherishing the moment she had finally gazed at him, not with bitterness but with intrigue. A change, understated yet significant. He realized at that moment that she was curious for more, even if she wouldn't openly acknowledge it, and that signified the presence of hope. The following weeks unfolded in a haze of careful exchanges. Lena wasn't one to reach out casually, but now and then, she would drop him a message. Occasionally, there would be an inquiry regarding her mother, or perhaps a fleeting remark about something she had encountered in her reading or viewing. David replied to each message, mindful to tread lightly. He discovered from the outset that patience was essential when dealing with her. One evening, as he settled into his study with his laptop aglow, an email from Lena appeared in his inbox. It came as a surprise, especially since they had just conversed the previous day. The subject line was straightforward, a beckoning invitation. His heart raced as he pressed it open. "This weekend, my friend is hosting an intimate gathering at her studio in Brooklyn. It's quite casual, just a handful of creators and a few folks from the neighborhood. If you wish to join, you're welcome to do so. Take your time. Lena." David gazed at the screen, absorbing the words once more. The message lacked emotional depth. It wasn't even all that warm. Yet, the mere act of her inviting him, unprompted and of her own volition, seemed to signify a significant turning point. He swiftly typed out a message, maintaining a relaxed tone throughout. "I would be delighted to. Please provide the time and address. Looking forward to seeing you there." On the evening of the event, David made his way to the studio, a transformed warehouse nestled in Williamsburg. The atmosphere was softly illuminated, adorned with an array of paintings and sculptures interspersed throughout the room. This was not the sort of gathering he was accustomed to experiencing. No need for formal dress codes or networking events, just individuals engaging in conversation, laughter, and the exchange of their creative expressions. He sensed a disconnect, yet his resolve to persevere remained unwavering. He noticed Lena on the other side of the room engaged in conversation with a young woman sporting vibrant pink hair. She had yet to lay eyes on him, and for a fleeting moment, he paused, contemplating whether he was overstepping his bounds. Yet, as if attuned to his presence, Lena pivoted. Their eyes locked, and she offered him a subtle nod, a gesture of recognition that carried a hint of warmth, though not quite fully formed. He approached, his hands tucked into his pockets to avoid any restless movements. "Hey," he remarked, maintaining a cheerful tone. Lena waved her hand in the direction of the woman next to her. "Hey David, it's Olivia. She manages this space." Olivia extended her hand, her grip strong and assured. "Ah, so you're the father figure." David arched an eyebrow as he cast a sidelong glance at Lena, who responded with an exaggerated roll of her eyes. Lena whispered, "She really speaks her mind." Olivia smiled brightly. "It's a positive development. No one here seems to care." David let out a soft laugh. "It seems I ought to get ready for what's ahead." The evening unfolded with light-hearted dialogue, Yet David observed Lena maintaining a certain distance. She made introductions to a handful of individuals, yet she maintained a respectful distance, showing no particular inclination to remain close to him. He realized that this was her domain, and he was just an invited observer. The mere act of her inviting him carried significance. In a serene nook of the studio, he paused to admire one of Lena's paintings. The composition was a whirlwind of deep reds and blues, merging seamlessly in a dance of chaos and purpose. He sensed an essence within the piece, an unarticulated yet potent force. Lena's voice emerged from behind him. "It's about my mom." David glanced over to find her there, arms crossed defiantly. "It's truly stunning," he remarked sincerely. "Feels unfiltered." Lena gave a subtle nod. "I created this piece a few years back, during a time when I was still navigating the complexities of grief and what it truly meant to experience it." David forced down the tightness in his throat. She shrugged. "Did it? On certain days and on others not so much." A moment of silence lingered before she began to speak once more. She never truly had the chance to express herself as an artist in the way she envisioned. She was perpetually engaged in her tasks, relentlessly striving to balance her finances. "I find myself pondering that frequently." David sensed the gravity of her words. He had devoted countless hours to reflecting on his own losses, the years spent unaware of Lena's existence. Yet he had not fully considered the depths of what Sarah had endured, the challenges she undoubtedly encountered, the sacrifices she willingly embraced. "She would take great pride in you," he murmured gently. Lena's expression changed, a hint of vulnerability flickering in her eyes before she turned her gaze elsewhere. "Perhaps." David felt the urge to elaborate, yet he understood the importance of restraint. Instead, he simply remained there, gazing at the painting alongside her. For a moment, it seemed as though a genuine connection was blossoming between them, effortless, unhurried, simply authentic. As the evening drew to a close, Lena accompanied him to the door. "You didn't embarrass me," she said, a slight smirk playing on her lips. David responded, considering it a victory. She paused, contemplating her next words. "Thank you for your presence. I appreciate the invitation." Lena gave a slight nod, then pivoted back to the studio, silent and resolute. David observed her departure, a subtle wave of relief washing over him. The journey ahead remained extensive, yet this evening marked yet another stride forward. For the time being, that sufficed. Before moving on, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David lingered outside Lena's apartment in Brooklyn, cradling a small, meticulously wrapped box in his hands. He had devoted the past few weeks to meticulously nurturing their connection, acutely aware that it was a delicate structure that could easily crumble if he rushed or uttered an ill-chosen word. Yet, following that evening at the art studio, an undeniable shift had occurred. Lena had begun to open up to him, not entirely, but just enough for him to catch fleeting glimpses of the daughter he never realized he had. This evening, he found himself here, driven by a desire to move forward, a thought that had lingered in his mind for quite some time. With a steadying inhale, he rapped his knuckles against the door. The door creaked open, revealing Lena, her face a mask of mystery. "You didn't mention you were coming," she remarked, leaning against the doorframe. David beamed with delight. "I aimed for it to be a delightful surprise." He paused, the small box lingering in his hands before he finally offered it to her. "I have something for you." Lena regarded the box with a hint of skepticism before accepting it and moving aside to allow him entry. "There was no need for you to get me anything." "I know," David said, observing her as she settled onto the couch and delicately peeled away the wrapping of the box. Within lay a refined silver bracelet, understated yet sophisticated. A delicate engraving lay hidden within, a tribute to the daughter I never had the chance to know, yet will forever hold in my heart. Lena gazed at it intently, her fingers delicately following the contours of the words. David paused, a sense of anticipation gripping him as he awaited her response. Then, without glancing in his direction, she murmured, "It's beautiful." David let out a slow breath, sensing a burden ease from his chest. I wish to give you something from my heart. Something genuine. Lena nodded, her gaze fixed on the bracelet. I'm not sure how to approach this, she confessed. I'm unsure of what it means to embody the role of a daughter. David settled into his seat opposite her, his tone soft and soothing. I'm just as uncertain about being your father. However, we can work through this collaboratively. Lena finally raised her gaze to him, and for the first time, there was an absence of anger, an absence of resentment. Only truthfulness. Understood. It was an unassuming word, yet it bore an immense significance. David sensed a constriction in his throat, yet he simply nodded in response. Understood. In the months that followed, their bond deepened and flourished. They began gathering consistently, occasionally over coffee, at times for dinner, and sometimes simply to stroll through Central Park. Lena had her boundaries, and David honored them, never overstepping his limits. Yet gradually those barriers began to crumble. As dusk settled, they strolled through Times Square, the vibrant lights shimmering in the surrounding windows. Lena buried her hands deep in her pockets, casting a sidelong glance at him. I did some digging on you, she said, prior to our encounter. David let out a soft laugh. So what did you discover? So you're wealthy, she remarked with a sly grin. Like incredibly wealthy. David chuckled heartily. Condemned. Lena let out a deep sigh. It's peculiar. My mother never sought anything from you. She didn't even mention my existence to you. We faced countless challenges. There were nights she forwent her own meals, ensuring that I had enough to eat. And you? She halted her steps and pivoted to confront him. You possessed it all. David experienced a profound pain in his chest. I understand. Pains me to think that I wasn't present. Had I been aware. Lena cut in. I know. I wish she had shared that with you. Perhaps circumstances could have unfolded in an alternate way. David nodded, suppressing the guilt that loomed over him like a heavy fog. Perhaps. Yet what lies ahead is all we possess at this moment. Lena gazed at the bracelet adorning her wrist, the very piece she had donned daily since he had gifted it to her. Indeed, the horizon ahead. As the months transformed into a year, their connection deepened. David began to share glimpses of his life with Lena. The tasks he once prioritized, the camaraderie with his peers, all the elements that had held great importance in his life now felt trivial when weighed against the bond he was nurturing with his daughter. And Lena, in her own way, guided him into the realm she inhabited. She revealed her artwork to him, shared tales from her childhood, and gradually began to refer to him as Dad. The initial moment she uttered those words, David found it necessary to retreat to the bathroom to regain his composure. One day, Lena reached out to him with surprising news. I want you to join me somewhere, she said over the phone. Absolutely. Where might that be? To the resting place of my mother. David felt a tightness in his chest. He had always intended to make the trip, yet the thought of going solo had held him back. At that moment, Lena was inviting him to accompany her. It would be a privilege, he murmured gently. A handful of days passed, and they found themselves before Sarah's grave in Greenwood Cemetery. The atmosphere was invigorating, and the foliage had started to transform into a vibrant tapestry of hues. Lena knelt and gently laid fresh flowers on the grave before she began to speak. Mom, this is David, she said, her voice quivering just a bit. I understand you kept my existence from him, and I'm left wondering why that is. Yet, he is present at this moment. She inhaled deeply and cast a fleeting look in his direction. I believe you would find him quite appealing. David's eyes stung with emotion as he rested his hand on the cold headstone. My deepest apologies, Sarah, he murmured, for the absence, for lacking awareness. I assure you, I will be the father our daughter truly deserves. Lena extended her hand, catching him off guard. I believe she would be fine with that. David clasped her hand tightly, a wave of gratitude washing over him. Years had slipped through their fingers, but now a new opportunity awaited them. For the first time in ages, he genuinely felt that everything was going to be all right. If you enjoyed this story, we would appreciate it if you could subscribe to our channel, like, and share it with your friends.